My name's Matthew Croucher and I'm a psychiatrist of old age, a specialist in older persons' mental health. What we're going to talk about now is alcohol and brains again, but this time not so much about brain cells and that kind of hard anatomical way of thinking about it. We're going to think about alcohol and depression and anxiety. So in terms of depression and anxiety, I think what we've got to recognise straight up front is that sometimes we have a drink because we're feeling bad and we don't want to feel like that anymore. And it is true that if we're really stressed, really wound up, feeling really low or really worried about something, that having a drink can, for some of us, take away some of the intensity of that feeling, make us feel a bit better. For some of us, that's why we drink. But underneath all of that, alcohol, if it's taken regularly and over a period of time, has two effects which are not helpful for depression and anxiety. In terms of depression, the underneath effect is that our low mood becomes harder to budge, and we're much more likely to have trouble with depression over the longer term if we are drinking regularly. And you don't even have to be drinking a lot. It's just regular intake above a kind of minimum level of, say, a glass of wine a day can, in susceptible people, make us much more prone to depression. In fact, as a psychiatrist of old age, one of the first things that I will advise someone that comes to me who's having a lot of trouble with depression in their lives, and they've tried this and they've tried that and nothing's working, is just cut down the amount of alcohol that you're taking regularly. And sometimes that's all I need to do from a biological level to help people to rise out of the hole that they've found themselves in. So whilst one drink might make you feel a bit better if you're really wound up, drinking regularly will make it more likely that your mood goes down. And that's not a good thing. Now when it comes to anxiety, it's a slightly different story. When we've got significant troubles with anxiety in our lives, where worry and panic are problems that affect us day to day and hold us back from the things that we'd like to get about doing. One key problem that will make anxiety worse over the long term, even though it makes it easier in the short term, is anything that artificially will cut through our anxiety without us having to face the fear and do it anyway. I'll tell you what I mean. Just say we're afraid of heights, for example. If I never ever put myself in a position of being up a ladder or at the top of a tall building, I'll never have my fear of heights. Problem solved. Now it's all fine as long as I don't have to go into a high place every now and again. And then by avoiding it, I'll just make the fear bigger. Now with alcohol, if we're having a trouble with anxiety or worry or panic in our lives, and we're using alcohol to artificially dull that down, the fear itself will grow. And if it's a fear of something that we're going to have to do every day or frequently in our lives, like, for example, if we're getting really wound up and worried about public, being around other people, talking to our boss, if we're using alcohol to dull that kind of fear, it's going to be growing and growing and growing because the alcohol is not helping us to face it, it's artificially cutting through it. So on the one hand, while a drink or two might make us feel better if we're low and really distressed or stressed, or if we're really worried and panicky, having drinks regularly is going to wind up our system so that we're more likely to have trouble with depression or more likely to have trouble with significant anxiety. So once again, we're talking about something to do with our brains, the organ that for me is the most affected by alcohol, especially in later life. But this time, instead of focusing on dementia and memory and brain power, that side of things, we're thinking about more human things, how we're feeling and the kinds of trouble that we can have with depression and anxiety. And here alcohol really is a double-edged sword that we have to think about carefully. One more brain thing that is linked to depression and to anxiety that we're talking about is sleep. And again, the message is the same. A couple of drinks might help you to fall asleep, it's true, But taking alcohol in regularly and over a significant period of time will eventually unravel our sleep, especially for those of us that are vulnerable to sleep problems. So the theme is the same overall with depression, with anxiety and with sleep. A couple of drinks is something that many of us will do to make ourselves feel better when the problem is just happening and it's severe, we're very distressed, we're very unhappy. But over regular use, months, years of just soaking our brain in lower doses of alcohol, we will end up being more vulnerable to problems with depression, more vulnerable to problems with anxiety, and more vulnerable to problems with sleep. This doesn't mean that all of us that are drinking alcohol will end up with these, but it does mean that those of us who are prone to one or more of those problems are much more likely to have trouble with them, and will be much harder it'll be much harder for us to get better. What we're going to do from now on is think about some other parts of the body besides the brain, just so that you can begin to weigh up what might the pros and cons be for me with alcohol as I get older.